so many beautiful faces in the space. It really means a lot to us. And this is an incredible show that we are so excited about. It looks amazing. The show looks amazing, but like I always say, you can't have a great show without great art. And it's full of great art. And I'm very thankful for all these artists for participating with us today. It's greatly appreciated. I've been big fans of them for a very long time, and I love seeing their work together. My name is Daniel Fallsgraf. I'm the owner of WheelHouse Art, and I'll just a little introduction about this show. So I started thinking about, lately in the news, we've been hearing a lot of terms like fake news or post-truth society, a lot of issues with like artificial intelligence and people questioning whether something is real or not, when they see a photograph or see some writing of something, not knowing if a person wrote it or if an artificial intelligence machine wrote it or whatever. And so that made me think about how we deal with that in our world today, dealing with trying to figure out what's the truth and what's not true, and the stories behind those kinds of things. And that made me think of, this, we're living through that right now, but this is not the first time that we've been dealing with that. For centuries, probably as long as people have been communicating, we've been dealing with telling stories and what's true and what's fake. And so I just naturally started thinking about examples of like fairy tales and fables, conspiracy theories, wives' tales, urban legends. All those things are all kind of like, or even stories like real people, fictitious stories about real people, like George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. He didn't actually do that, but he's a real person. That's kind of the story that we tell. And so even whether it's real people, fictitious stories, or fictitious stories that we use to tell our beliefs, our truths, even through a fictitious story, it was kind of the impetus for this show. In fact, an example of like a nursery rhyme, hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon, the little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with a spoon. That seems a very innocuous nursery rhyme. Doesn't mean much to anybody these days. But recently I saw one theory behind it. It was actually describing a celestial map in the sky, where the cat is Leo, the fiddle is Lyra, the cow is Taurus, laughing dog is Canis Minor, the dish is Apollo's bowl, and the spoon is the Big Dipper. And the purpose of sharing those particular constellations at that time, particularly the cow jumping over the moon part, is the time of year when all those constellations are together around the moon, is the time of year that farmers traditionally would sow the seeds for planting their crops. And so centuries ago, a lot of farmers were illiterate, and so they had no means to read and write and plan ahead. So it was, these kind of little short stories and nursery rhymes and things like that to help remember, when to do what kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of the artists. First, I'll start with Colleen Merrill. Colleen was a graduate of the University of Kentucky. That's where I first met her. I'll just read what Colleen had quoted about her work. My work examines how our intricacies become entangled amongst larger society domains. The forms are designed for domestic space that have been repurposed for public use, installed amongst remnants of fireplaces, mantles, doorways, and fixtures. They create figurative conversations that exist within the gray area of both public and private. So Colleen's work is all the fiber sculptural work that's repurposed quilts and materials that she picks up from secondhand shops and things like that, and recreates them into these sculptural pieces. Next, we have Matt McDole sitting here at the end, and Matt's pieces are the black and white drawings. Matt's work explores love, mystery, and the macabre. He mixes tattoo flash art style with pop culture references, seamlessly blending deadpan humor with a modest amount of melancholy. Matt's clean graphic imagery expresses a kind of be happy, life is meaningless attitude, and believes that people should make the best of their situations in the brief amount of time that we have here. We also have Elsa Hansen Oldham here. Her work is the embroidery work here and a few pieces around. She's around here somewhere. And what I love about Elsa's work is she's really a bridge, and particularly with the other work in this show. In a lot of ways, she ties together with Matt's work, where they both have this pop culture and history references in their work with the figures that they do. She bridges old world and new world with her fiber work, like Colleen Merrill does, using these old quilts and creating new contemporary work with them. And I just love, she connects the dots between the subjects, like the piece over here, Moondog, the musician, with the character Moondog, played by Matthew McConaughey in the movie Beach Bum, along with Lakai, the first animal sent to space and to orbit the Earth, like a moon, but it was a dog. So it's a moondog as well. And it's just, oftentimes her work is kind of a puzzle. You have to figure out sorry for the pun, but you have to find the common thread among the work. And sometimes, it's fun doing the research to see what it is that she's putting in there. We have Monica Stewart here, sitting in the middle. Monica is a multimedia artist working with paper, fabric, and wood. Her work is deeply rooted in drawing, combined with sewing and paper cutting that creates clear-cut objects of her work that allow her to expand her ideas across materials and concepts. She contrasts potentially abject imagery with bright, saturated colors to allude to the fanciful and grotesque, while constructing works that border on the illustrative. By cutting, arranging, and embellishing, she creates allusions to both the playful and the perverse. I didn't make that up. That's primarily all Monica's artist name.
Sounds like I went to graduate school, doesn't it?
And finally, while not necessarily explicitly in Truth, Lies, and Fairy Tales exhibition, we have another solo show by Yoko Molotov back here, and here's Yoko. Her show, A Japanese Afternoon, is All Quiet on the Western Front. Yoko's work is inspired by manga art and surrealist autonomism, a free-flowing art-making process in which the artist suppresses conscious control over the making process. Her work blends comedy with tragedy, innocence with erotica, and precise, graphically technical style with unpolished expressionism. The work in this show that she did was done this year, and it was all thanks to, she received a grant earlier this year from Great Meadows Foundation, so she was able to attend an artist residency in Itoya in Takeo, Japan. So all that work was either created in Japan or inspired by Japan after coming back home. So I've only got a couple questions per artist, and I guess I'm going to try to start with Colleen first, since she's not here. So if she stumbles, then she won't know any the wiser. All right, the first question. With each artist, I was wanting to know how exactly they got started on their path to creating their work, their style, their media, their influences, and whatever. I love the diverse nature of all the work in this show, and particularly all the unique ways that the artists are working with different materials in new and different ways, combining them in all sorts of different forms, and really creating their own distinct style among all of them. So I'm going to try to start that with Colleen here first.
The path that I've taken to arrive at the work that I create now really started in undergrad, where I was interested in creating sculpture. I loved the sculpture studio. I loved the environment. I loved the people, and was always inclined to working in the third dimension, and started off actually using metal and creating welded sculptures, which I would want no one to see now. But then when I went into graduate school, I entered the fiber studio at the University of Kentucky and just fell in love with textiles, whether that be weaving, embroidery, soft sculpture, just loved the process-based orientation of textiles, loved the portability of textiles. You can really work anywhere you'd like to. And loved just the versatility of the different processes and the tactility of the material, because the material is so personal. And that began to take me down the road of the personal, of narrative, of storytelling, and really focusing inward on my own personal experience as a woman, as a mother, as a person within a nuclear family, starting to question my personal experiences and doing that through the work. So really in love with the idea of how intimate the material is and how that intimacy leads to then a personal experience with the viewer. So the viewer can bring in their own experience and their own story into the piece.
Thank you, Colleen. I appreciate that. That was terrific. I guess we'll just move on down the line. Yoko, if you can share kind of what got you started with the manga-inspired work, or the collage aspects, the surrealist optimization. Thank you.
I don't know. I've been drawing this stuff for so long, but I would say like I really, really, really love Austin Osman Spare. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he was a mystic from England. It was like he was like a contemporary of Aleister Crowley, but he wasn't like a twat like him. He was like very brilliant, and he like created the automatic drawing. If you guys haven't read about him or looked at his art, you should, because he's phenomenal and way more interesting than I could possibly be. But as far as like, I don't know, man, you guys really, this is boring. You want to really know? This is like, I've been drawing since I was little. I'm drawing little cartoons and stuff. And then, you know, I like this found the anime, and I was like, this is really weird and sexual. I don't know what to think about this. I'm 14, and I think I'll keep doing this. And then like I've read a bunch of books, and like, you know, it's like that.
Yeah.
Monica?
I mean,
similar
Do you like
trajectory.
Austin Osman Spare too?
No, not that similar. I'm gonna look him up. He sounds amazing.
He's the coolest.
But I always made stuff. I always like that was the best way to occupy my time. The fairy tale stuff really came when I went to graduate school. We've all heard my parsimonious BS from grad school now, but I was really interested in fairy tales because they're places where like the stories are all about becoming and about the powerless gaining power and about like families breaking up, right? So they just became really interesting places for me. They're like seemingly really simple, but they're also incredibly complicated and bloody and sexual and
I like that stuff.
yeah. Yeah.
How about you, Matt?
I always just was into skateboarding, and that was what I did always. But you get hurt a lot, and I still wanted to do something rather than just sit around or hang out. So I just got more into making stuff. You know, I made stuff when I was younger and in high school and whatever, but got way more into it from being hurt skating. And I just did what I could do. And then I stumbled across the Beautiful Losers documentary and was like, oh, these people are kind of doing stuff that I am already doing. And it was the first time it had been shown as like being taken seriously. And I was like, oh, I will do more of this. And that's just that. I just kind of make what I like and don't have any big grandiose like outlook on it or what I'm making. I just kind of make what I want to make, and if I'm just true to myself, it'll naturally tell a story.
It's been fun watching. Like I remember, like when you're much younger, seeing some of your stuff. You know, it's kind of Ed Templeton-esque kind of figures, but seeing you like shortly after really start with this black and white graphic work that is just like really stuck and is everywhere. Everyone loves. So.
And a lot of that was from like liking graphic design, and then like the early 2010s, it kind of turned into like a more minimal graphic design. But I didn't know how to do anything on computers, so I just took my time and tried to draw as perfect as I could. And that way, if I took a picture of it, maybe it looked like graphic design, but always, you know, done by hand.
Yeah. Okay. So, second question I have are, what are your favorite urban legend, folklore, fable kind of thing? And does it show up in any of your work in this show or elsewhere? So again, let me see if I can find Colleen here.
It's really hard for me to pick a favorite story. So instead, I'm going to pick a favorite genre. And the genre that I've been looking at a lot that has really informed my most current body of work would be vintage children's storybooks. And it's this sort of American phenomenon of having storybooks that are educational for children. So instead of a fantasy or a folklore or a fable, it's more of the practicality of instructing children on how to live their lives. So, for example, my current body of work is titled Day In and Day Out, after this book that tells the story of two children living on their farm, and what they do on from day to day. Another example is this book called We Look and We Listen, which is instructing children how to look at nature, how to look at animals, and find this very fascinating that from such a young age, we are teaching children expectations of how they should live. And I'm very intrigued with how that might evolve into adulthood, how we are set to have these certain American cultural standards or expectations for our lives, and how when we don't meet those expectations, we feel like we sort of failed, whether that be the nuclear family or buying a house or having children. And I want to kind of push back on that and dissect it a little bit. Also, if I did have to pick a favorite folklore, it would, of course, be Little Red Riding Hood, because some of the pieces in this show are inspired by that story. You can see in Big Bad, the piece that is the large red piece that's long. At the very bottom of it, you can see a flip doll that has grandmother and the Big Bad Wolf on one side. And then the other piece that I have in the show is inspired by this book, Squirrels in the Garden. Is actually, it may look like it has a squirrel in it, but it's actually another Big Bad Wolf from the same type of vintage doll. And I want to evoke this idea of the sort of evil character that is coming against a heroine. So, for example, Little Red Riding Hood being the heroine, Big Bad Wolf being this evil character, and how we can use that as a metaphor for the different obstacles or battles that we have to partake in our everyday lives. And the Squirrels in the Garden piece is inspired by my own narrative of squirrels in my garden eating all of the bulbs that I planted this season, and how it was this really just funny joke, but it was similar to the Big Bad Wolf, where I kind of questioned, well, are they really that big and bad? Or are they just really trying to have a snack like a squirrel trying to eat a bulb in a garden? So I sort of like these parallels that happen with these different stories.
Thanks, Colleen. So Yoko, are there any particular like Japanese fables or anything like that?
Has it always got? Oh, because the show was Japanese.
Yes.
That's why.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I keep washing up on that shore.
Me too. As we can see, my favorite folklore story is The White Serpent, The Tale of the White Serpent, which was a Chinese folk tale, and it's about a man that finds a white serpent, and he like helps him. There's also a green serpent with him, and he helps both of them. And it's like I don't know if you guys know this, but in like fairy tales, there's like a category system. So this would be under the grateful animals category system. Category. And later, the white serpent becomes a woman and marries the man. But there was this film in 1954 that is Japanese called Yajetsu, which is one of my favorite films. And it is, this whole white serpent thing happens, but the woman, the white serpent woman is like this fae, like villain type, and she marries the man who is already married, and he's like a peasant. This is like way, way back at the old house, like in the 1600s. So this is a long time ago. And yeah, he stays in the fairy world. It's like rad, and he's like, oh, right, I'm married. He goes back, his wife's dead. This director does that a lot with those films. Anyway, I really dig that. I dig anything where it's like an animal and a person, you know, like the animal becomes a person, like a lycanthrope type situation. I draw animals a lot.
Right on.
Yeah.
Monica?
Yeah, no, I obviously am down with the animal-human hybridity, like great fairy tale fodder. And I feel the same way. I often do come back to fairy tales that involve like transformation of some kind, either from like animal to person or person to animal, or et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, big fan of Little Red Riding Hood. Yeah.
About you?
Okay, so as far as just like the theme of the show, my favorite story would be one that I did draw, and it was this rumor I heard when I was probably 16 to 18 years old that was about this person, and I heard it from multiple people, and everybody always had some sort of close relation to, like, my uncle knows this guy, oh, my cousin knows this guy, oh, my friend's dad, blah, blah, blah. And it was, there was this guy who ate too much acid, and now he thinks he's a glass of orange juice, and he's in a mental institution, and he's afraid people getting too close to him because they're going to knock him over and spill him. And I just thought it was random that everybody had this story, but then when I looked it up in preparation for the show, like, what is this story? Is this a thing other people know about? And it goes back, there were, first off, people all over the country telling this story, but it started in the 60s, and maybe it was put out as some sort of, like, anti-drug propaganda to, like, scare people away from doing stuff, but it's not the story is interesting and funny, but it's more the fact that people love to just tell stories to shock people and get that attention.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a ghost story or acid orange juice guy story, people love to tell people stories and have their attention and be shocked.
Yeah.
So just that type of stuff is kind of more interesting to me than ghosts and fairy tales and stuff. It's just like rumors and stuff like that.
Is it true or is it? Yeah.
There is zero confirmation that this ever existed, that there's anybody that had this happen.
Questionable or whatever. Or at least like even like the one with the don't swallow the watermelon seeds. Like when you're a kid, you'll actually think, is that true? Like you actually, it's believable.
Yeah, some kid told me, they're like, have you eaten a watermelon seed? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, have you eaten dirt? I was like, oh yeah. They're like, when you drank water, you have a watermelon growing in your stomach. And I was like, oh no, like, that is too big for my little body. You don't understand those things. Or the gum, like somebody's like, don't swallow gum, it never digests, or it takes 7 years, or whatever, and you just out of fear believe it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. That is all for the questions for now, but I do want to ask if I can get 4 volunteers. 5 volunteers. 5 volunteers from the audience. So we're going to do that with our artists. Each artist is going to share 2 truths and 1 lie. And then you got to figure out which one is the lie. All right, so this is, I'll ask you first. This is going to be Elsa's 2 truths and a lie. All right, the first is, I was a competitive skier. I'm wearing a light blue sweater, or everything you see is energy.
The first one is a lie.
Competitive skier, you got it. Nice. All right, and let me see if I can pull up Colleen over here. Okay, you're next.
In addition to my graduate degree in art studio, I have a master's degree in anthropology. I'm a terrible cook. I can't cook anything. I haven't made a regular meal in years. And my favorite genre of TV show is British murder mysteries.
Nope.
I'm going to say, what was the first one?
She has a master's in anthropology.
That one.
You got it. There you go. Thanks, Al. All right. Yoko, 2 truths and 1 lie.
Will you do it for me?
Sure.
I don't care.
That's the way to do it.
Do you need a microphone?
No.
Yes, she does. Totally.
Oh, Jesus.
I found a human tooth at the bottom of the ocean when I was diving off of the Keys when I was 17. I have an inner lip tattoo that says "Bite me," and I'm 33 years old. You think that's a lie? No, I am 33 years old.
What do you guess?
That is a lie. My inner lip tattoo does not say that.
All right. Okay, you do whatever you want. Yeah. All right, so Monica. It's your turn.
I'm excellent at parallel parking. I make great biscotti, and I knit a sweater for myself last year. I'm really, really terrible.
All right, last one. Al, Matt.
I go over in my head really quick, so I don't. Okay. I'm allergic to horses. Me and my mom have the same middle name, and I've never seen the movie E.T.
Your mom had the same.
We don't have the same middle.
So everyone that won the prize, they got an autographed magnet by the artist, a WheelHouse Art gift card, and thank you for participating. So, thanks all.
Maxing out your memory. Maxing out my